नमस्कार। श्री Ramakrishna Kathamrita. कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदादतं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भुरिदा जनाः। श्री Ramakrishna Kathamrita प्रथम भाग चतुर्थ खंडो सप्तम परिच्छेद. This is our second reading from the seventh chapter. Yesterday, in the introduction, we saw that how Sri M has mentioned, he has included the fifth shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, 12th chapter, Bhakti Yoga. Eshodhikatarastesham avyaktasaktyatesam avyaktah gatirduktam devat bhirvapyate. That in continuation with Sri Ramakrishna's teaching, that Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, is extremely difficult for this Yuga. And this is what Sri Krishna in this Bhakti Yoga has also mentioned to Arjuna. That this is extremely difficult to follow the path of knowledge. And this specifically Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna in the Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. And Sri Ramakrishna also, he always emphasizes this fact that devotion is much easier path, although it is not that easy. But compared to the path of knowledge, the path of devotion is most suited. Rather than easy, it is most suited for this Kali Yuga. And then with this path of devotion, trading on this path of devotion, one can convert the wretched, the unripe ego into a ripe ego, into a beneficial ego, into like ego of a servant, das ami, ego of a devotee, a devotee, ami, or ego of a child. I am a child of my mother, my divine mother. I am the child of Kali. I am the child of Shama. That kind of attitude, if one develops, and it is, in fact, Sri Ramakrishna says, it is not only that there is any harm in retaining this kind of ego, the ego of a servant, the servant ego, the devotee ego, or a child ego. In fact, this retaining this type of ego can lead you to God realization. Sri Ramakrishna said, Ete dosh noi, keeping the ami dashami, keeping the bhakti rami, keeping the baloke rami. There is no dosh in it, there is no harm in it. Brum, on the contrary, they ishwar labh hoye. This will lead you God realization. So, fine. We know for sure ego is not going to go till a person attains samadhi. If ego is not going to go, accept the wretched ego is there. Ego is there. Now convert this wretched ego to servant ego, to the devotee ego, to the child ego. And now, having heard this, Vijay Krishna Goswami has another doubt that at one point of time, Sri Ramakrishna says, because of this ego, since it is extremely difficult to destroy the ego, man remains entangled in Kamini Kanchon, lust and greed. So now, Vijay Krishna Goswami has this doubt and he asks Sri Ramakrishna, Acha, यार दास আমি তার কাম ক্রোধাদি কি রূপ? Now, naturally, if at all we are retaining this ego, although not a wretched ego, not an unripe ego, not a bad ego, not a rascal ego, but having retained the ego in the form of a servant ego, Vijay Krishna Goswami asks that in that case, if we retain this das ami, what is the nature? How does lust and anger appear in that person? With the, no, with the wretched ego, what havoc the lust and the greed can create for a person. But having converted that wretched ego into a servant ego, into a devotee ego, into a child ego, how do these lust, because unless or until you get rid of ego in its totality, it is extremely difficult to get rid of lust and greed in totality. Now the doubt is, if that is the case, if we are converting this ego, if we are retaining this ego as a servant or a devotee or a child ego, how do this lust and greed in a person they reflect? That is a very valid question, and Sri Ramakrishna has got a beautiful answer to this. Sri Ramakrishna says, ঠিক ভাব যদি হয়ে তাহলে কাম ক্রোধের কেবল আকার মাত্র থাকে। Sri Ramakrishna says, it is only, it is the reflection, it is the semblance, that this lust, the lust and anger and all these six, the qualities, they remain just as a semblance, only for the namesake. They don't have any real depth in them. Sri Ramakrishna says, যদি ঈশ্বর লাভের পর দাস আমি বা ভক্তির আমি থাকে, সে ব্যক্তি কারো অনিষ্ট করতে পারে না। Doesn't matter, it might be there inside the lust and greed and attached with the das ami, I mean servant ego or the child ego, but it will never harm anybody. It is there just for the namesake, just for the semblance, that's it. It will be there. So what? পারসমণি ছোঁয়ার পর তোরবার সোনা হয়ে যায়। Having touched a philosopher's stone, the iron sword will get converted into a gold sword. That's the property. Traditionally, it is always said that parasmani is the philosopher's stone. So the moment you touch any metal to it, it gets converted to gold. Now Sri Ramakrishna is giving the example of the sword. Normally, a sword can just cut a person into pieces. Now what Sri Ramakrishna says, it is like a sword touched by Parasamani, by the philosopher's stone, where it gets converted into golden sword. And once it becomes golden sword, তোরবারের আকার থাকে, কিন্তু কারো হিংসা করে না। Golden sword, it will retain its shape, it will retain the form of a sword, with that curve and sharp look, but golden sword won't be able to harm anybody, it won't be able to injure anybody, it will just be the shape and form of a sword made out of gold, converted to gold. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna says. This wretched ego, like the iron sword touching philosopher's stone getting converted to gold sword, this wretched ego, touch it with the philosopher's stone of devotion for the Lord, the devotion for the mother, and convert it into the dashami, the balokerami, bhakterami, convert it to the servant ego, convert it to ego of a child, convert it to ego of a servant, make it Lord servant. And although lust and anger and greed and all these six passions, they may appear to be there in the person, but they are of no consequence. They are just there for the namesake. They will not harm anybody. He will not injure anybody. He will not injure any person in anything because of lust and greed. What he would have done had ego remained as that Ajat home, the wretched ego, the rascal ego. Now, Sri Ramakrishna gives another a very nice example to explain how just the mark of that ego remains. Hmm. নারিকেল গাছের বেল্ল শুকিয়ে ঝরে পড়ে গেলে কেবল দাগ মাত্র থাকে. Sri Ramakrishna is telling that the moment a branch of a coconut tree falls, what happens? There is just a mark on the trunk of the tree that the branch has fallen off from this place at one point of time. Sometime one branch was there, it was a huge leaf, and it fell down, and that mark is here. সেই দাগে এইটি টের পাওয়া যায় যে এককালে এখানে নারিকেলের বেল্ল ছিল. So seeing that mark on the trunk of the coconut tree, one can make out, oh, at one point of time, there was a coconut leaf, and the branch attached to this stem, it was carrying that huge coconut leaf. Then it has fallen down. The branch has gone, the leaf has gone, everything is gone, but the mark is still there. That's it. Mark is the reminder that at one point of time here was a branch. সেই রকম যার ঈশ্বর লাভ হয়েছে তার অহংকারের ভাগও মাত্র থাকে, কাম ক্রোধের আকার মাত্র থাকে বালকের অবস্থা হয়ে. And Sri Ramakrishna says that once you have the God realization, once you are nearer to the God, once you are nearer to God on this path of devotion, on this path of bhakti, then what happens? Then all that pride, all that arrogance, the ahankar, pride, it is there only as a sign, bhagomatro, like the mark of that branch on the coconut tree stem. Just a mark. Yes, this fellow, at one point of time, he had such great anger. He used to lose his temper like anything. He used to get angry. He used to shout at people. He used to abuse people. Mark remains. That's it. The anger in a sense of injuring anybody. Anger in a sense in harming anybody. Inflicting wounds on anybody's emotions, sentiments. That power is not there. And কাম ক্রোধের আকার মাত্র থাকে. The lust and anger and all these passions, the six passions, they remain there only as a mark, only as a shape of that golden sword which has been touched by the philosopher's stone. If it was iron sword, it would cut anybody into pieces. Just you have to slash something, and it gets cut into pieces, it dies. Now it is only that shape and form of a sword, because that iron sword has been touched by the parashmani, by the philosopher's stone. Now it is gold, it cannot harm anybody. Look-wise you may think, oh my God, this is a sword, but in reality it will not even puncture, make any small wound. It's just like that. So on the path of devotion, once you convert this wretched ego to a devotee ego, to a child ego, to a servant ego, what happens? All these things, these passions, the six passions that I talked about, the anger, the jealousy, the lust, and the arrogance, pride, all these things, they remain there just for the name's sake. In reality, they have no effect on another person. So, and Sri Ramakrishna says that a person becomes just like a small child. Balokir obostha hoye. Now, Sri Ramakrishna now again is going to explain in details how does it what does it mean by saying that his condition becomes like that of a child. And in our next reading, we will read how Sri Ramakrishna is explaining this change in a person. This change in a person, not only from the iron sword to the gold sword, not only from the perspective of a branch falling from the coconut tree and just leaving that mark there. At one point of time, there was this branch with a huge leaf. Now it is all gone. Likewise, the passions may remain in a person just as a mark, and the person becomes like a child. So, in our reading of tomorrow's, we will see how Sri Ramakrishna is explaining to us this phenomena of changing from an arrogant, from a lustful, from a jealous man into a childlike, simple child of the mother. So that is for tomorrow. As of now, Om Namah Shri Bhagavate Ramakrishnaaya. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Jai Thakur. Jai Ma. Jai Swamiji.